What's up, humanities? Welcome back to class. Okay, this week we're kind of wrapping up our religion unit, and we are like smack dab in the middle, or even maybe getting towards the end of the Eastern religion part of the overall religion unit. Now, the Eastern religions, we started with Hinduism, now we're on to Buddhism, and then there's a few other philosophies that I want to kind of throw in at the end that we'll get to a little later on in the week. So, I would say generally Buddhism of all of the Eastern religions is typically the one that most Americans would be kind of most familiar with. Now, America is a Western culture, right? Kind of a European like traditional culture. And we like Christianity for sure has made the biggest impact on just American society in general, and then also Americans typically are fairly familiar with what Judaism is and Islam. Now, Buddhism is in a lot of ways, I think it's not so much a religion as more of a life philosophy, which is part of the big disconnect where, in the Western religions, we think of a creator God and he is watching what you're doing and you're trying to essentially play your cards right, do what you need to do so that you can get into heaven in the afterlife. Buddhism and really in general, the Eastern religions don't look at it quite that way. And actually in Buddhism, I think a big misconception that a lot of Americans have is that, hey, sorry, puppies are getting after it. My apologies there. But I think a big disconnect that your average American has with Buddhism is people think that like the Buddha is their god, who is Prince Siddhartha, and he was a prince and going to be an emperor in India, but he gave that life up to be like a holy monk and go around and to spread his ideas, the four big like core truths of Buddhism, and to try to bring more people into an enlightenment kind of state of mind. Now, Buddhists don't worship Buddha like Christians would worship Jesus, or Muslims would worship Muhammad. He is essentially, but in a lot of ways, he has some similarities from what I know of it to somebody that is like a Jesus type figure. However, no, a big kind of a core difference between these religions. He is not supposed to be divine or like holy or the Son of God or God himself. He was just kind of like an enlightened monk, essentially, that figured out enlightenment while he was sitting under, I think it was the Bondi tree, and it just all kind of dawns on him, and then he's trying to spread that message. But there are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences between Buddhism and Christianity. I think, too, from my American history kind of background and perspective, Buddhism is probably of the Eastern religions the one we're the most familiar with, because in like the 1960s, when you had like the anti-Vietnam movement and, all the hippies were out there and love and peace, man, Buddhism started to catch on and gain a little bit of traction in America because it became like a trendy type different philosophy, some alternative to the Western-based religions. Now, there's not a whole lot of practicing Buddhists here in the United States, but I think that number is, from my research, is trending up a little bit. And like I said, that's probably of the Eastern religions the one that us Americans are, on average, most familiar with. I also think it's kind of interesting that in some ways, and I know religious scholars might beat me up for this and say I'm way off base, but you could essentially be a Christian or a Muslim and also follow a lot of the core tenets and subscribe to the philosophy of Buddhism. It's not like they're two totally separate religions, and believing in one means you cannot believe in the other, because, like I said, it's not like you're worshiping a different God. It's just that kind of the core, backbone philosophy of Buddhism is that all life is suffering and that our desires lead to a suffering. So if you get rid of your desires and just try to transcend that and don't get tied up into all the worldly material things and getting ahead, more money, that you'll have essentially a better life, a more content, fulfilling life. And I think there is some beauty to that, because, one thing we know, and we'll talk about this more towards the end of the school year, but I think I've covered it before. Having a lot of money, a lot of material wealth and possessions can be a good thing, but just having more money and stuff does not equal a more happy, more fulfilled life. Now, if you're living in poverty, that almost guarantees you more suffering. But the correlation between more money, more material wealth, more power and influence, that does not really correlate with an increase in happiness and satisfaction. We said like about $75,000 to $80,000. That's kind of the end of that correlation. That you drop down the poverty line, that's gonna make your life rougher. But going up, you can find a lot of people that are very wealthy, very powerful, that are also quite miserable. So I think that is a similarity that I see between kind of Christianity and Jesus's teachings and the teachings of the Buddha. That both of those guys, if you look at their story, essentially were traveling holy men that were trying to share their message, and both of them basically swore off like money and worldly possessions. So I think that's kind of interesting that actually, from what I know of it, I think somebody who is a devout Christian and really looks at the teachings of Jesus, and somebody that's a devout Buddhist really have a lot of common ground, even though there would be some big things that they disagree on too, maybe. I like the kind of the core basic concepts of Buddhism. Actually, years ago, I was like, man, maybe I should kind of follow that philosophy. But some things that like kind of ruled me out of it for maybe these are character deficiencies on my own part. For one, in Buddhism, you're not supposed to eat meat. I guess the one exception is if you are a monk, they are essentially beggars and they don't really have like a full-time job. But they'll accept like donations, and you will go over to like Thailand or Tibet. They will give you the monks will go just like ask the local population for food, and the people support it. So if a person offers you some chicken or something, you are allowed to eat it, but you're not supposed to be the one that kills it or that causes that animal to die. Essentially, in Buddhism, you're not allowed to, you don't want to cause any more suffering. You're not supposed to kill anything that's alive other than like eating plants. So I'm a big hunter, and man, I love meat. That kind of squashed the whole Buddhist path for me. And then the other thing is, if you are a devout Buddhist, and there is some common ground here with like Islam and some versions of Christianity, that you're not supposed to get like a buzz or do any kind of intoxicating substances. So like alcohol or marijuana or any drugs that you could come up with, those are scratched off. A true devout Buddhist would not want to do any of that. They want to not do anything to distort their perception of reality. And now we haven't hit our unit in like war or our unit that's all about like drug use in America and essentially the war on drugs. And don't take that as I'm some big drug addict or junkie or anything. I'm not saying that, but every now and then I do like to have a beer, and I felt like that was, hey, puppies, Harper. I'm sorry again. I'm babbling too much. That's her cue to telling me to shut up. So that was another thing that kind of, I guess, deterred me from the Buddhist path and following the teachings of the Buddha. Overall, though, I find it to be a pretty interesting religion, and there are, I'll say, a lot of aspects of Buddhism, like meditation and being mindful, kind of living in the moment, trying to not cause suffering, and to realize that a lot of our desires and things that we want do bring us suffering. I think those are some aspects of Buddhism that I've kind of I recognize to be true and appreciate about the religion. Okay, that's all I got. My puppies are raising hell over there, so I need to go attend to them. But that's kind of my intro commentary on Buddhism and my understanding of it up to this point. And I do plan to continue researching, and I've been watching a lot of videos too. So I'm trying to walk that path with you too and learn about this religion as we're covering it through our unit. So do some digging on your own. I recommend that there's no shortage of videos out there that tie into Buddhism and what it is. Do some research on your own. And I'll get back with you later in the week on some other assignments and things that we have that will tie into this. Take care.